All right. Hello, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another pairing stream. How you doing this
Morning.
morning, Mike?
Doing good, doing good. A little bit of a froggy voice that'll come and go, but other than that, doing fine.
All right. So, what we've been working on is the Song Themes app, and we've been spending time on making the import process easier. And one thing I was thinking about was like we're probably doing work that is done by a library, especially sort of matching up headers and things like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so, what are your thoughts? I mean, we could basically say, why don't we just find a library that does this, sort of matching up the columns with the data, and then just extracting that versus continuing down that road of doing it ourselves.
I could go either way. I mean, my initial inclination is let's code it up and then see if there's a library and then decide is the library such that we don't need the code, or if we just go down the path where this coding this up is turning out to be a lot more work, where we're going down the not invented here syndrome
Right.
path, where it's like, okay, this is gnarlier than we thought it was. Let's just steal from someone else. I mean, borrow. Uh,
Yeah, and so
what were you thinking?
hey there, veganese. I wasn't thinking. I mean, it's what is our purpose, and how much effort is it to do it ourselves? Because I don't think it's a whole lot of effort. I mean, in terms of lines of code or any kind of measurement, related to sort of how much work it is. But it also depends on like, what's our goal, how long will it take us to find an appropriate library and then use it and then integrate it, and then we've now got a dependency. Although something like this is going to be fairly stable. It's not like it's going to, dependencies are going to update very frequently, things like that. So
Right.
It's really more what is, our goal here on the stream.
Right.
So
Which
that's,
there are several, I guess, right? There's one
yeah,
where we want to build this app.
right.
Two, we want to practice in some things we maybe haven't done or I haven't done. Like I've never done this sort of bulk import kind of stuff before. So this is
Mhm.
kind of a gas. That's positive slang, by the way. And then there's, the folks watching, is it helpful to them to see? Uh,
Right.
I'm inclined to keep going with hand rolling it
Okay. Yeah.
until we get into a major speed bump. It's sort of my gut. And then we go, oh, I guess it's harder to build that trust tower than we thought it was, you know. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, certainly from sort of a learning practice point of view, it's obviously better to build it ourselves. And so I'm fine with continuing down that route. I just wanted to sort of check in and make sure that, we're not going into this without thinking about, alternatives.
no, it's good. I'm glad you raised it. Did you look at all into to seeing if there any that exist?
Oh yeah, there are a bunch. Many of them are I mean, there are lots of them, and so part of the issue is sort of selecting which one we want to use, and
Right.
I'd have to go back to ones I originally found, and uh, again, it's sort of like
That's effort on itself as
that's
well.
yeah, that's its own, what's the cost of pulling in this dependency if it's because a lot of these libraries, because they're libraries, tend to be, as is their nature, sort of overly, I don't know if complex is the right word, but handle many more cases than we need to handle.
Right.
Um, so yeah, but let's continue down the road and let's see where we left off.
Sounds good.
I'll bring up your screen in a second.
No problem. Gives me time to move the stream out of the way.
All right, there we go.
I really want to get my monitors stacked one above the other instead of side to side because I feel like I'm always looking over here.
Yep, yep. I
Okay.
want all my monitors right here, except you can't do
Yeah.
that unless you're wearing like a Vision Pro, and then you got different things going on.
Maybe that would be the actual use for those clear monitors. Did you see one of those where
Yeah.
it's like a piece of glass? Well, maybe you could sort of somehow switch one off so it's just clear and you could see to the one behind it. And then I don't know. I can't really see a use for a piece of glass monitor at this point, at least from my. So we got a failing test.
Right.
I do not remember where we left off, but apparently it was related to that. So
Yeah. So what we did was, if we look at the song service test, I think the ones that's failing there. Actually, I think they're all failing for the same reason, which is we basically tried. What if we said the minimal columns were 3? So if we look at the parser itself, we'll see that's where. I think if you so we basically set the minimum columns to 3 because really the minimum columns of required columns is actually 3 because it's artist, song title, and at least one theme.
Right.
But by doing that, we basically broke we broke a bunch of tests. So
you think look at them one at a time, top down, or
well, I think if we look
the
at
yellow one?
Yeah, if we go straight to the yellow, amber, whatever color that is, that's sort of the one that is failing sort of for a different reason than the others, because here it doesn't have enough, and so it's sort of expected that this one would fail. Why don't we change minimum columns back to, I think it was 8 before,
it was
or 9, whatever it was before, and let's run the tests again.
So now only one should fail. Yes.
Right.
So we'll make this one pass and then moving the minimum columns back to, or not back to, but to the correct number.
Yeah, so this is where we ran into the problems. Like, in order for this test should pass, but it doesn't have the minimum number of columns.
Right.
But if we change the minimum number of columns, as we just saw, we break a bunch of other things. So is there a smaller step we can take that lets this one work? Or, because
in order to disable this and change minimum columns to 3 and then change those tests. Because, right, I mean, the goal is we need to move it to minimum columns 3. So it means the other tests are checking something, or likely checking something.
Yeah, so maybe let's change it to 3. See what the tests, see which tests are failing and how much work it's going to be to fix them up.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I would do from a formatting standpoint is put on line 55 there at the end, put the triple quotes on a new line.
55. Oh, like that.
And
then reformat.
Yeah, if you reformat, I'm not sure. It might just leave it. I'm not sure. Go ahead and reformat. Good. That did what I hoped it would do.
Though it's kind of weird to have this. Or do you normally like that offset?
I don't care about the offset. It's whatever it defaults to. You could try to unindent it. I guess I'm not sure that's much better. So maybe let's go back.
Or, I mean, to me, this is
Yeah.
slightly better.
Yeah, the question is, will the auto reform? So there is a setting that I've changed on how it does text blocks, because I find that its default setting is basically something like that, and I don't
Yeah, yeah.
understand. I understand why, but I don't like it. All right, let's not. Sorry for distracting
Not
us.
yak shave on that. Yeah.
So this is failing because where is it actually failing? It's failing on the parse song. Okay. So this is interesting. So it's failing in a different place.
Oh, because this one is expecting 4 columns.
Yeah. So what we did was we handle if it didn't have enough columns, right? So basically preventing the exception that we just got, which is there aren't 3 columns, or there isn't a column 3 from 0 based. So when we change the minimum, our guard clause no longer caught that issue. So what we can do is we can fix that. We can basically say release type isn't required. So let's.
Do we check if there is a 4th element? And if there is, then
Well,
assign to release type, or
actually, let's think a bit deeper. Is the test still correct?
let's go back. Let me make it bigger because it's kind of a large test.
So we do a create TSV songs with header, but the data doesn't match the headers, and the header may not be correct either. So I think the intention of the test is just that we get failure messages for a failed import, but I think our test data is no longer something that we would expect.
But we're expecting a failure in this case because line 57 is only 2.
Right.
Hmm.
We're expecting 2 failures, right? Because line 57
Right.
only has 2 columns, and line 58 only has 3 columns. So we're expecting 2 failures.
Right. In the current test.
In this test.
Yes.
But that's not like that would never that would be difficult data to import. Like you wouldn't be able to copy a spreadsheet in such a way that you'd get that data.
Good point.
So so I think the test setup is actually wrong now.
But we still want a failure message for a failed import. But we need
Yes,
the failed
but
import to be
we need the failure to be a reasonable failure as opposed to a completely not, I won't say impossible, but extremely unlikely failure.
So if we did something like this,
One of my favorite songs.
really?
Yeah,
Oh,
such a
yeah.
great album. There are other good songs on that album.
No.
Alt J? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. I was just double checking because I tried, I think the other one.
Hey, Deshaun, aka Java Grunt. How you doing? And I popped up Moosh before, but I didn't actually say hi. So hi.
Howdy.
Welcome.
Howdy. So let's see. Now this is 3 songs. I'm sorry, 3 fields.
Right, but the header doesn't match.
But the header doesn't match.
So what I would say is import this method, and then let's clean up header to match.
When you say import, you mean inline?
I'm sorry, inline, yes.
Okay.
Not sure why I said import.
Well, we are working with the song importer.
That's true. And I did inline the variable so we can actually, or maybe just copy and paste it.
Which variable?
For the header.
Oh, like this. Got it. That's what you meant?
Yeah. And so what we've got artist, song title, release title. So then let's get rid of the rest of the headers.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
But the required is 4, which means a theme. Oh, but this is a failure.
This is the failure. Yeah.
So do we want to leave theme as a header though? Or
no, because what we're trying to do is
oh, right.
simulate you only copy the first 3 columns because you only copy
For
the
some
first
reason.
3 columns.
Yeah.
So if you take that string and put it on line 54.5, we can get rid of the weird appending.
And I mean just manually do it, or is there some?
Yeah, just manually do it.
Oh, okay.
You'll need one more quote, double quote.
Oh, there we go.
And it has to be on a new line. And now you've got one too many because IntelliJ was trying to be helpful.
Like, where'd that one come from?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we have valid, invalid data. And this is really interesting because when you're doing TDD or any kind of where you're writing tests on a regular basis, you're going to have tests that no longer make sense when functionality needs to change. And that's a fact of life. And people who don't like to write tests or maybe aren't very good at it tend to say, oh, see, I told you, now we got to do extra work. Now do I not only have to change my code, but now I have to change my tests? It's like, yes. If you'd like that code to be correct, then yes. It could be considered sort of wasteful overhead by folks who don't like to test as much. But then you may as well just delete the test and say, okay, now we're not going to test this at all. It's like that's your choice. But in this case, especially when you're making functional changes like we are, it's not just a matter of how do we make this test pass, but does this test still make sense in the new world that we want? And so before it didn't. Before it totally made sense because we were just saying, well, we're going to cache the failures because there aren't enough columns. But now we're in a sense relaxing that requirement to provide more flexibility as we increase sort of the complexity of the implementation, which means we have to do a little bit more work. Change a copy of the test first. No, I think we want what we want are tests that will continue to fail in the same way, even without changing the code, to sort of prepare for our new world, as it were. In some cases, it might make sense to basically say, well, let's just actually delete the old test, and maybe it's as a whole, it doesn't make any more sense. It doesn't make sense anymore. But this one does. All we're really doing. And it's very easy to get caught up in, like, let's fix the the code to make this test pass. But I guess what I'm saying in a very long way is evaluate, like, does the test make sense, and can you change it to fit with the new new behavior that you're going to want. So I think this is what we want. We want to say, you've only copied 3 columns from your spreadsheet. What happens? And I apologize for the car alarm if you can hear it.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Wow, that's one loud car alarm.
Well, car alarms are supposed to be loud, even though nobody cares about them. So let's run just this test. It should still fail because it's got 3 columns, but we're going to try to parse a 4th one.
But it's supposed to fail with 2.
But it's supposed to fail in a nice way as opposed to throwing an exception.
Right.
So the nice way is basically return failure results. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still throwing the exception.
Yeah. So so what can we do then to make this fail in the right way? Because it should have failure messages. It should fail, and it should fail with a result being not successful. So what do we think we can do? And while you think about that, I'm going to go see if I can shut some windows so we don't hear the car alarm.
Yeah, it's not his car alarm. It's somebody else's. I think he's closing the window to his place.
Finally, it timed out. I believe there's a law that the alarms have to time out after a certain amount of time. So seems like that one. My car is so old, it actually makes it more valuable, but does not have my car does not have the car alarm. So, what do we want to do?
Where is that being thrown? Oh, it's being thrown from here.
Yeah, because we're accessing the 4th column, which is column 3, which does not exist.
Which does not exist. So is there a way to test if it exists, and if it does, assign it to a leads type, otherwise ignore? Or do we do the simplest thing that could work and just make don't grab release type just yet?
I would say let's return a failure result if we try to access this column and it doesn't exist. The other option, the other option is we change the minimum columns to 4, so this doesn't happen. And I wonder what that looks like. Let's try that first.
Experiment first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now run all tests.
Yeah.
Or all IO free.
Yeah.
We reduce the number of tests failing
by quite a few.
Yep.
I'm
wondering if we should see if we can get it to work, get these 2 tests to work, and then go back and deal with the minimum column issue.
Yeah, let's take a look at these. So
this one.
So I would probably say the single song is, since it's at the sort of the lowest level, is probably what we want to do. I mean, this is the simplest one to change. We just say, okay, well, 4 is our new minimum, so then it should just say 4.
Right. Now, what's interesting is it's showing
the 2 columns that it has.
But it has more than 2.
No, that's not the test that's failing.
Oh, different test.
Different test.
Ah.
What are you thinking?
I was seeing if there was the side-by-side compare. That wasn't there. So we could just do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our new behavior. We're allowing fewer columns
Yeah.
because really we should never have, not never, but it perhaps was not correct to force it to be 9 columns.
Now this is parsing a single song. At this point, do we say we shouldn't even be passing in the test two? Or do we get this to green first and then deal with that?
I think get the green and then we can reevaluate uh, uh, where we're at.
Okay, so that one went to green.
Mm-hmm.
Now this one,
So this is the one that should be successful, but isn't yet.
parse all return success when header rule has required columns.
So this is the test that we'd like, that ultimately that we'd like to get passing, but there's some tests in our way to get to here. So I don't think there's any way to get this test to pass without changing the minimum required columns to 3.
To 3, yeah, I don't think
Which
so
will,
either.
of course, cascade and cause the other tests to fail. That's fine. We can then look at the other tests and see.
So make it 3. We haven't
Yep.
actually committed in a while. I was just thinking.
Well,
Everything's breaking now. Yeah, never mind.
I don't know that there's much to commit.
Yeah.
We haven't, other than writing the test on top, we haven't done a lot. So I think these are all going to fail because index 3 out of bounds for length of 3, which is always such a confusing error message. Unless you understand that, oh, you're saying index 0 based index 3 is out of range. So let's do some backwards compatible change, which is if there isn't a third column, I think if we make that change so that if there isn't that fourth column, index 3, then we return a failure message, and then we should be at pretty much passing tests, and we can actually start changing the functionality to support this test. So I'd actually say let's disable the test on top because we're not attempting to fix it. And I would actually put sort of in parens a comment, a string that says enable when ready to start changing functionality.
Changing functionality is kind of vague. Do we want to be a little more specific? Or is this a short-term note?
I don't think we're going to need this for very long.
Yeah. Okay. Which one do we want to tackle first?
I would say the lowest level one. So rerun the test because that one should go away.
Parse single song.
So that one's failing because of the. We can probably update that one to just say must have at least 3 because that's now where we want to go.
Like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then lowest level would be this one.
Well, let's go look at it.
I wish there was something in between 150% and Zoom.
Well, what Zoom are you at?
150.
Oh, I thought we agreed 125 was sufficient.
I thought that was, did we do that for here or for ensembling?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, my notes still say for setup 150.
No, I think
And
100,
folks,
125.
125. Okay, let me change
Yeah.
my setup notes.
Well,
Done.
our viewers can tell us if this current Zoom level is okay, because it looks okay to me. So, but people can tell us
So
if
yeah,
that's a
the text is
problem.
too small. Let us know.
Yeah. Well, so there's a difference between like and can read. So if you can't read it, then that's a problem. But if it's just a preference, but you can still read it, then we're gonna
Just because we're
slightly
trying to
we're
get a
gonna
whole
slightly
method on the
optimize.
screen.
Yeah, we're gonna optimize for trying to fit stuff in.
So this one failed on out of bounds.
Right. So I'm gonna apply the question again. Does the test on top make sense?
And those rows with not enough columns. No, because
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all. In fact, I feel like we've already got a test like this, the one where we import inline the header.
right. So we could just blow this
So
test away.
I think we can. So this one is, yeah, because that one was testing failure messages. This one was just testing that it fails. But I think the other one supersedes this one. So yeah, we can get rid of this one. All right, let's run our test again. Hey there, stupendous fellow. Define big. So you're asking, do I know of any big open source Java projects with good architecture? So define big.
Hmm.
Uh, but because I can refer you to a bunch of projects, but I don't know what big means. I will say that I don't know of any that are let's say bigger than the projects that I work on streams. And I've looked a lot, mainly because there are simply not very many open source applications. Lots and lots of open source libraries and tools and things like that, but very few, relatively, actual applications. And the ones that I've looked at are poorly organized or insufficiently tested. But if you all find good ones, let me know because I'm constantly on the lookout for them. But open source is skewed towards libraries and frameworks and tools and utilities and things like that. And there's very few full-fledged applications that are like end user applications as opposed to things oriented at developers. There are some point of sale systems, survey tools, and the ones I found in Java are great for me because they're bad examples of stuff. So I can certainly offer you bad examples, but non-trivial applications that are well organized, not a lot. Hey there, the Zero Official. Are there any public projects with good architecture? Not that I'm aware of. There may be some. I the problem is when they get big, the open source ones, they sort of there aren't a lot. So projects, yes. Applications, there just aren't a lot. Hey there, 5G technician. Welcome.
Mhm.
All right. So what are our failing tests now?
The one on the top screen,
Okay.
index out of bounds.
All right. Well, then let's make that one pass.
So we've got 3, 3, 3. Well, the simplest way is right, but I don't like it.
Um, well, does that help us or does that make things worse? Let's see.
From a other test perspective. Got it.
Yeah. So that's a step in the wrong direction because we've now broken other tests.
Yep.
So I would say
Undo that.
nice to experiment, but
Yep.
that's a step that takes us away from our goal. So what is the test on the top expecting?
2 failure messages, not an exception thrown. Well, redirect to song import, 2 failure messages, and the songs.
Do we have a failure test in the TSV song parser? Because this is out at the song importer.
Right.
So we've got like a couple of failures, but we don't have what's the second one? Parser all returns failure when missing required. Yeah, so we haven't
Disabled
written
and we
that
haven't
one
written
yet.
it yet.
Yeah, so that's the one about the so we may have deleted the closer in test that actually tests our failure messages.
I was wondering about that. The one we just deleted?
Yeah, it was insufficient. And I thought we were actually testing the failure. Are we actually testing failure messages? So we are testing failure messages in the test above the one you're currently showing. So that one says parse all returns failure when fewer than 2 rows. But do we have one that does parse all and returns multiple failures? So what I would search for is just look for result.failure messages in this test class. So that one returns a single failure message.
Yep. Single.
That one is about right. So there's sort of 2 dimensions of error messages, failure messages. There's this row is wrong, which was the other one, and this one, which is the entire import is wrong.
Right.
Do we are those the only 2 that actually test for?
Yep.
Yeah.
Only those 2.
So I would say we probably want a test that has multiple failure messages. So similar to this test, and we could even expand this test.
Oh, this is parse single song, so it's a lower
Yeah,
level
this is parse
test.
single song. So we actually don't have one that's testing failure messages on a row by row basis. So we need to basically do that. And we could probably copy the test from the song importer test and sort of retarget it. Because
This
it's
one?
got a good, yeah, basically just take our setup from here of just the string, because everything else we don't need.
Okay. So just the string. And we want to do this at the song level or at the parse all level?
At the parse all, because what we want is what we're missing is a test that gives us multiple failure results. We don't currently have a test for multiple failure results.
So roughly here?
Yes, that looks like a good place.
Okay, so parse all. What's our structure? Something like that.
Yeah, so parse all returns multiple failure messages. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Good enough. Okay.
Yeah. You've got the search turned on, which is causing the highlighting, so you can escape out of that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure number of commits to dependence follow is a good metric. I think you'd want a metric of really of size of code base, because I can give you a you know a 3-class project that's been committed lots of times, then that's not going to probably be useful. Because my guess is you're looking for a project, like you said, if it's going to have an architecture and it's going to have DDD and tests, it's likely going to be of a certain size. So honestly, the projects I recommend are mine. So Ensembler is a real world project. It's not huge, but it's definitely DDD. It's definitely hexagonal. It's definitely lots of tests because it was test driven. So that's usually what I recommend. It's non-trivial, but it is. I wouldn't call it big. I would say it's still a small size project. But again, that's why I ask big is relative. It's like I always joke. It's like whenever a bunch of runners get together and somebody says, "Yeah, I'm a slow runner," I say, "Well, what does that mean to you?" It's like, "Yeah, I only run 8-minute miles," and I'm like, "Okay, the fastest I can run is 9-minute miles. So clearly, you are not slow." So using things that are descriptors instead of numbers is problematic.
Plus, as Einstein said, everything's relative.
Yes.
Where's that rim shot when you need it?
Yeah, exactly.
I've done
so
partial.
I think what we want to do is, so I think before that, we just want to say has size of 2, and then we can copy the messages. So you can keep that. It'll fail on the has size of 2.
Oh, so and you can chain them like this?
Yep. Yep. The magic of a search A.
Well, if you use the right
character.
Huh. Why is it not like that anymore? Oh, it was just not parsed it.
Yep. So let's run just this test.
Do you want to predict before we let it rip, or are we characterizing?
I think it's going to throw the exception.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what we'd like to do is make that test pass.
So we want this not to blow up.
Right. But we want it to not blow up in a very specific way.
We want it to give a failure message.
Mm-hmm.
So here, this method is ending with a result success in all scenarios,
right.
Except at the guard clause.
Right.
So would we have another guard before we even get to 71 that then returns a failure result?
Yeah. Why not? Let's try it.
Something like, and we just be really specific. I mean, how do you test if a column exists in Java? Or I mean, not a column, an index. Has size or length? Is length the number of columns or number of array elements?
Yeah, the question is this going to do us any good?
Right, because we just checked for 4 here.
We just checked for 4. If we check for 3 here,
it's going to break everything all over.
We're back to where we were.
Right. Why do I feel like we're in a catch-22?
Well, so we can't do that. Um, so here we expect failure. Why do we expect failure? Because we don't have the required columns, even though we have enough columns.
Oh, because we're not checking the headers.
Yeah. So I wonder if we go back to 4 and then see what's failing.
Just one.
Right. So this is giving us so let's make this test pass and we can just pretty much copy the output because the output is for now going to be fine. We can just literally
Yeah.
copy the actual everything inside the brackets, including the double quotes.
Oh, all the way.
Yeah. You want to copy both.
Yeah.
And then basically just paste that into the so it was a bit of a characterization test, but that's fine. Yep. So that one should now pass. Hey, Jonas.
Right.
Welcome.
And that was only just wrote.
So where are we now if we run all the tests?
I think everything passed.
You're not running all the tests.
Oh, all you meaning?
I mean, sorry, all the IO3 tests.
It got, yeah, it bumped back. I forgot.
Yeah, that one just keeps flipping back and forth. Technically, well, let's change it. Let's get to passing. And then I think we've got to start. Yeah, so this is probably a good point to do a commit. Did the stream start earlier today? No, it started at the usual time. But if you're in a time zone outside of the US, then you might be off by
An
because of
hour.
a time zone change. But we started at the announced time, which was 9:30 Pacific, 4:30 p.m. UTC. So I think that's the main thing is we basically reduce the number of required columns from 9 to
Yeah.
4.
Maybe don't need to say what we're preparing
Yeah.
to do yet.
Yeah. All right. So I think we can now go and look at our disabled test because I think now we have to actually start changing functionality.
Which one? We've got two.
Well, the first one is not really written yet, so it's the second one that we want.
Right. The first one's empty, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's delete the disabled. It should fail. I feel like we need to put the result is success is true first before we check for failure message is empty. Somehow it feels
Yes.
weird to check the success last.
That is weird. I don't know how we did that. Oh, maybe we were growing the code, and we were starting with,
Maybe.
yeah.
So all I know about Kotlin, Veganese, is longer build times than Java. That's why I don't use Kotlin. I find it slow. It's the same reason I don't like TypeScript, because it's slow. Compiling Java isn't immediate, unlike a non-compiled language like JavaScript, but it's usually fast enough, and development environments have been optimized and build tools have been optimized for rebuilding pretty quickly. So, what does our test say? What are our tests against the parse song method, the parse individual song method?
I think there's only one. Yeah, the one that's in the nested test class. Or not
So
nested, this one.
let's yeah. So I think we actually have to start here, because so this returns failure for row with not enough columns. Again, we can sort of go. We can do this inside out or outside in. We can either change parse song directly, or we can change it. It basically will change it anyway, but indirectly tested through the parse all.
So you're saying have a new test at this level if we're going to go closer to parse song.
Yeah, so that's one option, is basically have a test directly against parse song, and this is where we're going to have to pass in some kind of schema, or just the header rows, and let it do it. This is because it's currently hard coded to use column indexes, and we'd like it to stop doing that.
Right. So it makes sense to do it here, since we're really going to be modifying parse song pretty dramatically.
Yes. So here we're basically we should probably write a successful test,
first.
and then modify it. Yeah.
Right.
So in a sense, sort of backfill a test that should
Should have
that
been,
will
or
we'll want
not should have.
that would work with the current code.
Right. We want to mimic the title, so it's like that.
I would probably rephrase it to say with required columns,
Yeah, it's true. We got to move to required.
because it's no longer
We
sort of a
started,
number.
right.
We'd
We've
like to
changed
sort
our,
of,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Should we rename this one, or that right now it's just checking number?
Once we actually start changing behavior, then we can do
Then
that.
yeah, it makes sense. So pretty much steal this and then change it to legit. Do I have some data that's legit?
You could
Oh
probably
yeah, I can
grab
actually.
from another test in the class.
Yeah, I was going to do that. Is Blue Oyster in here? Yeah, this one, because that's one with 3.
But that's not correct. What we want is one that's correct. So it has the required columns. Those are not the required columns.
Oh, right, the card is the theme. Do we even
Yeah.
have one in this?
Yeah, that one right there.
There we go. That one, yeah.
Well, you're going to need. Eventually, you're going to need 54. But that's fine. We can copy
I'll describe it that way.
Yeah. And so we want to drop the header. So I'd probably just comment out line 171 because we'll need that shortly. Yep. That's it.
Okay.
We need to redisable that test.
Yeah.
And so now you can say disabled until the parse single song tests work. So TSV stands for tab separated values as opposed to comma separated. That's what TSV is.
I learned that a little while ago myself. For a while there, we were naming stuff, tab separated columns.
Yeah. Yeah,
values.
TSV is less common, which is strange because it's such a better format. Although it does use white space, so I guess from some points of view, it might be a worse format. With commas separated, though, you have to deal with commas actually in your data, and that's the big difference.
Yeah. And the reason we're using tab separated is when we discovered, we thought that when you copy from an Excel spreadsheet like this, that the default was comma separated or you had control over it. Turns out you have no control in Excel and that it gives you tab separated, period, end of story.
Well, I think we were originally thinking if you exported it as a CSV, it would do the right thing with quoted commas, which it doesn't.
It does,
which is it
only for the cell that has a comma.
Yeah,
so it's inconsistent, which made parsing a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it doesn't abide by the standard, the RFC standard, so it's useless. But then we also said, well, actually, that's not what we want anyway. We want to be able to just copy and paste from the spreadsheet. And that's when we discovered that it puts tabs in the clipboard, which is great because that's easier all around.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I disabled that. I can't remember if I reran the test, so I'll just rerun them again.
Tabs are otherwise useless. Them's fighting words. For those of us who tab indent our code. I don't tab indent my code yet. I have been toying with the idea of switching. So this fails for the right reason. Yeah, it's basically failing, even though we'd like it to succeed. We've been a little bit lazy about improving our test outputs. So here it just says expected value to be true, but was false. And that's not a very helpful failure message. So let's improve that a bit. Do you know how to do that, or do you need help?
I think I need help.
Okay. So if you put in 178 and a halves, and you say .as, and then we can put a string in there.
And
we can say,
cool.
Song with minimal columns should have parsed successfully.
Required columns?
Yeah, with minimal? Required column. Sorry, required.
Man, my typing is crap today. With required columns is, what was that again?
Should have succeeded. Comma, but did not. And period. So now if we run it, it will at least show that message.
That's cool. Is that an assert that feature?
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't use the as for when the output is clear what happened, but when it's Booleans,
true false,
then you want to kind of have that.
If only they had, instead of is true, they had an is true that's overwritten where you could put the string here.
So there was discussion of that, and it turned out to be confusing what the message should say.
Mm.
Because is that message shown when it succeeds or when
Succeeds
it's when
or
it
fails.
fails?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, or, it, uh, those kinds of things can seem obvious, and then you try it out, and it's like, oh wait, that's really confusing.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
all right, what I did wish it did, and it can, but it's hard, is display the variable that you're asserting on. But that's not easy.
Oh, assert on song result. Not
Yeah. And this is where I start looking at, and we've talked about this before, creating a custom result assertion, and that would obviate the need for having the as, because then you'd say, assert song result is success, and then it could clearly say that it was successful or failure and have a much better error message.
can song result be a parameter? In other words, can this be parameterized in some way?
Yeah, you could not
Not that necessarily that syntax, but
um, I forget what the syntax it uses for that.
would that help
But
in what you were thinking of?
no, what I was thinking of is I don't want to have to write that message.
Got it.
Um, because we're basically saying this failed but should have succeeded, right? So we're translating true and false to success and failure, but result already understands success and failure. So what I want is assert that song result is success.
Right. And then song result knows what the definition of what kind of failure it is, and
Well,
it
it
will
still wouldn't
say,
say that anything about required columns, but it would just say that it's success and failure, at least using the language of the result,
instead of
uh,
true and false.
instead of just
Got
a
it.
generic Boolean true and false. Yeah.
Got it.
All right. So this fails for the right reason. Um, do we want to take a break before we embark on making it pass?
Yeah, we should. It's been an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah. All right. So we'll take a short break, and then when we come back, we will try to take some steps towards getting this test to pass. So we'll see you in a bit.
See ya.
So just a couple of notes. Let's see, where are we? Yes. So I have a Discord in case you didn't already know, and if you didn't already know, you're welcome to join. And it's a nice community for asking questions and discussing things. Maybe you need some help with a project you're working on, or you want to discuss some thoughts or ideas about domain-driven design or test-driven development or just testing in general, or things around IntelliJ or those kinds of things like the Spring Framework. So all that, we got channels for each one of those topics, and lots of folks who are interested in discussing them. So go ahead and join. Go to ted.dev/discord and go ahead and join. All right.
So we left off that this had failed. We're writing a test that we want to succeed.
Yes. So we'd like this to succeed. And we know we can't just change the number of minimum columns because we know that causes other things to break. And so what we could do,
Should we do a parallel change to a different version of parsong?
well, so we could. So you had a little experiment where you basically replaced release type with an empty string, and that broke things. But maybe what we can do instead is actually only replace it with an empty string if that column sub3 doesn't exist.
Right. And just do it and not be a failure message. In other words, something like
Right. Basically provide a default. Yeah.
right. So would you test if it doesn't exist by seeing if the length, so if
Yeah, we would evaluate the length because there's no other way to do it other than
columns.length
catching an exception, which is not a great way to do it.
is less than 3? No, less than or equal to 3.
Well, I would
My
actually
brain
say,
is
I mean, it depends on,
it's
well, I don't know what you're going to put inside the if statement.
right.
So what I would say is if the column's length is greater than 3, assign it the way you have it on that line. Else release type is yeah. And so we need to bring release type into out of that scope. So before you do the else, we need to bring that into scope. So Alt Enter.
Or just Alt Enter.
So we want to split into declaration and assignment.
Ah.
And then you can move that line up. And now we can do the else. In fact, we don't even need to do the else. We can just say release type equals just right there.
Is that copacetic?
Well, so IntelliJ is telling us something,
Oh.
because we now have minimum columns of 4, but I think we can now drop the minimum columns to 3.
Would you do that if after testing to see if this passes and then move the minimum columns down?
Well, there's no possible way you could get to this line of code,
Oh,
right? Without there already being that number of columns.
Right. So if we ran this, it would still fail.
Right. So if you look at what IntelliJ is telling us, is that condition is always true.
Yeah. So if I go here, yeah.
But what we want is now this allows us to change the minimum columns back down to 3, which is the true number of minimum columns.
And are we just going to run this test or run all?
No, we're going to run all.
Okay. So now they're breaking.
Now they're breaking for a different reason.
Right.
Because we're trying to parse the themes.
So this one, wait a second, this one's still failing.
Yes, because we're not paying attention to the column headers yet.
Ah.
So how do we get back to green? Because we're not in a good state right now.
No, we're totally in a bad state. Part of me thinks just revert this because I'm not sure that's the next step that will work for us.
Well, if we revert it, we keep going back to stuff not working. I think we need to push forward. So I think what we need to do is we don't parse the themes if there aren't at least a sufficient number of columns. So the same thing that we did here is provide a default if there weren't more than 3 columns. We provide a default of the themes if there's not enough columns.
So in other words, break this into
Do exactly what we did for the other, for the release type, is if there's not enough columns, then provide a default.
so split into declaration.
Yeah. So there's another way you could do that. You could surround it with an if, and it will automatically do the split. Or
The
maybe
whole
it
line?
won't be.
When you say surround, meaning
Never mind. Never mind. Never mind.
no?
You can do it, but I'm not gonna.
Is it?
I'm not gonna bother walking you through it because it's actually more work. So just do.
Okay. Sounds good. And then we'll
It's
just
not
do
more
it.
work if you're really fluent, but it's more work if I have to describe it. So
Right. Got it. New array list for an empty. Or
no,
we
we just
leave
need
it.
to assign an empty list.
Ah, right. Collections empty list. Got it.
Yeah. And now we can surround the parse themes with the if.
Do we? Oh, as long as it's greater than 4.
Yeah.
Shift up arrow. Yeah. So as long as it's got that one, then it means it's at least that one and then possibly more.
Correct. Yeah.
So then this should
This should get us back to
green.
close to green. It may be that the themes are wrong in some cases, but that's fine because we're succeeding now where we perhaps we're needing to fail.
Right. This is succeeding now. So just go top down, or do you want to go parse single sign? Go lower up.
Let's fix that one. That one's just an error message, so we can just fix that one. Or a failure message. Good evening, Astrid.
Okay. Hey, Astrid. So that one's got a redirect unexpected. This one's got a failure, expecting false for expecting true. Same here. Tighter in first.
So now what we need to do is these are correct failures, and we now need to basically correct for them. So what these are expecting are failure messages because they are actually failures. And so what we want to do is update our code so that if there aren't enough, so having default themes is not what we want. What we want is to just return a result.
Sorry, I'm lost you. It may be
So
asleep
this is a
about it.
correct. This test should fail, but it's not. In the sense of it should
Oh,
be
it's succeeding.
it should not be successful, but
Right,
it is,
because
and we can't tell. So why don't we improve our error message there on 43 on the top, and say we expected it not to be should not have succeeded, but did. This is where I really want a result assertion. So let's run it again. We should see that failure message. Yeah. So it should not have succeeded, but it did, and that's what we want to change. So this is so the test is correct. It's doing the right thing, and now we need to change our code to get this test to pass. So we did in our code we did empty list, but actually what we want to do instead. So you're looking at our test. We need to be in the code.
yeah, I know. I was around the same time you said that. I was going wrong place.
So the code that we literally just changed, we need to modify. So it's not that. In fact, we need to delete that assignment. And you could probably combine that back with the actual assignment. No.
Nope.
What you want to do is move the line down using line down movement, and then the combine lines with Control Shift J. And what we want is we want an else here. So for column 3, we were okay for temporarily, right? We're trying to do the minimal amount to make it backwards compatible. But here we actually need to return a failure result.
But by doing that, we broke line 75, by the way, by pulling themes in.
No.
Oh.
Not when we finish writing this line of code.
Okay. Sounds good.
Right? Because we're going to do a return here, so it's not going to hit line 77.
But how does this?
Oh, because it's out of
here?
scope. Oh, we can fix that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing we just moved into scope.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. Because what we can do is we'll pull line 77 and 78 into 73 and a half.
Ah, that's where you're heading. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And we can do that now if you want.
Because we're about to do a return in the else anyway.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so you're saying result failure.
Well, we pretty much want to copy and paste what we've got above for the failure message. No, not, sorry, above in the current method that we're trying to change. Right, we basically want to copy and paste that result failure.
Ah, all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Or actually the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Minimum columns is going to be the wrong number because we're saying it has to have at least 5.
Is it 5?
Well, 5 is the only number that's minimally greater than 4, so yes.
Oh.
because we're saying if we're going to process themes, we need at least 5 columns. This stuff is temporary. It's going to change as we move towards arbitrary columns. But for now, we just needed to do that.
Symbolic okay here? I mean, hard-coded value.
Because
we're going to change it anyway soon, right?
Yeah, if you want to do it that way. I mean, you could just put that as part of the string and combine the string. And then do a Control-Shift-J. Yeah. And we can change our expectation on the test above where it says must have at least 4 to must have at least 5. Because I think that's what we're expecting now. So let's run the tests. All right, so we are now backwards compatible. And now we can actually start making this test work.
So this is sending in the required columns, but there's only 3, and the current code is expecting 5 columns.
Right.
So we want to continue it.
Yeah.
But we want to move toward it being based on the header and back to the required of just 3 being
correct.
Artist, song title, and at least 1 theme.
Yeah. So this is probably a good place to commit since we're back to the green that we want.
Are we totally green or?
No, because the test right there is failing.
Failing, yeah.
But that's the only failing test. That's our new behavior test.
How should we phrase this one? Back to the green we want. I'm joking.
Well, we changed our requirement, right? If we look at the parser, we've changed our minimum required columns to 3. That was the main thing we did, right? Yeah. So that was the main thing we did is support minimum number of columns 3. Because that's what we want, right? We've been trying basically for the since last stream is to get it so that really the minimum number of columns required is 3, but every time we tried to adjust it to 4 to 3, we run into problems, and so we basically said, okay, well now we'll just have a default release type, but now we're missing themes. Well, actually, that's if there aren't enough columns, then the themes won't parse, and actually that's okay. So now we're back in good shape. So now now we finally get to do a change of passing in the headers, because now we want to map. Now we want to do mapping of the header columns to the actual content.
So we're gonna.
You look thoughtful. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to think of how we would do that. I think we talked about passing in a header to parse song, so it knows what each column.
That's where it might start. It might not be the right way to go, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
You said it might not be the right way to go. Do you have another thought?
Well, it may be inconvenient to pass in the header row, and we might want somebody to pass in something nicer. But for now, all we've got is the header row. Faster, we've got a failing test. We don't need to write another test. We'd like to get this test to pass. This test is not quite complete because it's not prepared to take the header. So that'll be the first step we take, is that we pass in the header that we have there commented out. And once we do that, then then the parse song has everything it needs. It just doesn't use it yet.
Something like this.
Yep.
Now, if we do that, that's going to change all the callers. Do we do change
Indeed.
signatures so they get called, pass in blank for now? Well, if we do that, then
well, so let's see, how many callers are there to parse song? Because we only have this test and the test above it. I don't know that we have
there's only
all that
one.
many calls. Yeah.
2 tests and 1 production call.
Right. And the production call will adjust manually to basically not do to basically grab the first line and hand that in. But for now, we'll just pass in an empty string. So yeah, so let's go ahead and change the signature.
So let me undo this.
Oh, you don't need to undo that.
Really? It would change it if I do Alt Enter?
If you do that, yep. We want to add, yeah, that one. It's funny, they're both strings, and so it's saying which one is the new parameter, because it doesn't know, although it kind of should. But it's the second one. And that's why the preview is so useful, is because it says, oh, you're adding in a new parameter that's the first one that should be called header.
Yeah, the preview is pretty sweet. So
we want to provide a good default there, so click into that.
There we go. I'm like, how do you get into
that? And I think the default value is just going to be empty string.
We do that, or we have to do, is that sufficient?
It's a string.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if I needed to do new string empty or something like that.
No, string's a string.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so this is an interesting thought I had that I thought about, that I've used before when I'm explaining refactoring, is that refactoring is the fanciest search and replace. So we're basically replacing all calls to parse song that takes a single parameter with all calls to parse song, whatever you type in here, a comma, and then what already is there. So it's doing a search and replace of those calls with whatever you type in here. So whatever you type in here is going to be what gets in the code. And so how do you define an empty string? Two double quotes. And so there's nothing special or fancy about it, other than it has to be of the type of string.
Right. Got it. Refactor?
Yeah. Hey, Suiji.
Hey, Suiji. Continue or show conflicts?
No, we're gonna so we have a bunch of places where it's called
There's 3.
And that's interesting. So IntelliJ didn't tell us about those Lambda calls. Let's hit cancel, because I want to double check. And let's cancel out of this. Let's go to parse song and find usages. This is wrong. It's actually missing all the method handle versions of parse song.
There's more than one?
Oh, maybe there is just the one.
Yeah, I thought it was just in here, which is parse all. And that's the only place it calls parse
somehow
song.
I thought there were more, but you're right. That's the only one. So what'll happen is it's going to change that, because it can no longer, because method handles only work if there's a single parameter.
Right.
And so what IntelliJ is going to do, likely, when we redo the refactoring, is it's going to change that to be
a lambda,
the lambda form as opposed to the method handle form, that's fine. For some reason, I thought there was other usages that it wasn't picking up, but that was in my head and not in reality. All right, so let's redo or let's actually do the refactoring. Yep. Nope, wrong one.
Yep.
I hate this dialogue because it's never as big as I want it to be. And so I'm constantly resizing this dialogue. And this has been an issue with IntelliJ for years. And I knowing swing and AWT layouts, I know this is hard, but they've got lots of smart people and they still haven't been able to figure it out. Because usually it's like it's too small and I have to make it bigger, both width and height. All right, let's refactor. And yes, we're fine with that. And so we can see there on the bottom line 25, it did exactly what we expected it to do. But that's fine.
Cool.
That will be an interesting change once we get there. All right, so let's so now we're passing in the header, and so now there at least is the possibility that that we could get this to work. Before we passed in the header, there was absolutely no way that this could work without it. Yeah. And in fact, I'm almost wondering if we should swap some of the columns so they're not even in the correct order. But maybe we'll write a separate test for that. So now we'd like to use the header for what? What is actually what's actually wrong? How's this test failing again?
It's probably just doing a true false. Song with required column should have succeeded, but did not.
Okay. So
we could, for that failing test, we could assert before it the failure messages to see what they are.
Well, no, we can get to what we want. So what's the difference between the way this method is calling parse song and the way the production code is calling parse song? And I encourage you to look at the actual way production is calling parse song. So what's the difference between the tests parameters and the production code parameters?
Well, production's getting a blank header passed.
Right, right. So what we can do is we can say if the header is blank, we'll fall back to the old indexed column way of doing things. Right, because if we do that, if you don't pass in a header, we'll fall back. And eventually that fallback will go away. But at least this, again, our goal is parallel change. How do we support new functionality without breaking existing functionality? I mean,
that's cleaner than trying to do a different parse song method 2,
right,
which takes a header and the other one doesn't. And then
right.
The empty header is easier and cleaner.
Yeah. So let's do that.
Go to parse song. So now, would we if a blank header, we want to do all of this. So we would something along the lines of header.
You can just say is empty. Yeah.
Is empty. But do we want if it's empty, we want to just continue to do all that stuff, or do we put all that in a giant if block?
Well, I mean, what we could do is before you even write the if statement, extract the entire contents to another method.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Now, do we need all of it in the other method? I guess we do.
And we could say we can call this parse song without header. right? And in a sense, you know, what you mentioned before about creating two methods, one with a header parameter and one without, that's kind of what we're doing anyway. It's just a
Right.
different sort of starting point to get there. And so now we can, what you can do is, if you do surround with, that's what I was trying to mention before.
Is it a oh no, it's a
It's
keyboard shortcut.
Control Alt J,
Control Alt J.
but you have to be on the right. Your
Yep.
parrot has to be in the right place.
It got moved. Yeah.
Sorry, not Control Alt J. That's surround with. We want to actually Control Alt T.
Oh, that's the refactor. Oh, that's
Yeah.
T. Oh.
So
And
that gives you the options of an if and if else. We probably want an if else, and now you can just write the is empty. And now we know that the only thing that's calling it with a header is our test. And so how do we get our test to pass?
the simplest thing that'll get it to pass.
What's it asserting?
Oh, if it's success. Oh, just really just return.
That's all the test is asking for, right?
True.
And it's not inspecting the song. So it is expecting an object, but we can return null, which really it shouldn't allow us to do. And it actually doesn't know which success we want. But we do want result success. It's just that there's one that takes an individual song, one that takes a list of song. We can return an empty list. That way it knows which one to call. Let's run our test. Ta-da! Ship it.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. It passed.
So now it's clear that our test is insufficiently precise, but it was a good first step. So now we want to ratchet up our expectations.
Yeah.
Not that it returns success, but also that it actually parses the song correctly.
Crazy that. Oh,
and here again, a dedicated result assertion would be nice, because then we could say assert song result is success and contains, and then give it a song. But
we do song result.
I'm very tempted to do that now, but that would take us on a tangent. So
I think I'm doing
well, we need to pull the value out of song result.
Right. Yeah. Now we can do
yeah,
exactly in any order, right?
Well,
there's only one.
There's only one, so there's no point in saying in any order. And now we need to define the song that we expect.
That's trying to see what the format is.
I just want to say new song.
Yeah.
And you can hit Control P to see what the order of parameters is.
Yeah, that I knew.
Yeah. So I want the artist. Yep.
Wait a second. Nope, that's not the right order. Release title. So that'll be artist.
So the question is what do we want the release title and release type to be if, right? Because we're saying that those aren't required columns.
Right.
What do
I
we
would
want
think
them to be?
that's what I would do.
Blank is fair.
And this needs to be a list of.
Yep.
What am I missing? The red squiggle is unhappy. Oh, an extra right brace. There we
Yeah,
go.
and that's where
Control. What is it? Don't tell me. Code completion. Control Shift Enter
yes.
would have taken that. So I'm going to undo that here. No. Over here. Control Shift Enter, and that completes it.
Yep.
Sweet. That's at the top of my list of shortcuts to work on.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I don't even think about anymore. Veganase, yeah, I agree. I think the way the status bar is laid out is, but honestly, I don't look at the status bar very much because once the tests have run and I've gotten the information, I generally just don't even look at the status bar anymore. All right,
Let's run it. Well, now it's gonna. The code
well,
doesn't.
now we've ratcheted up our expectations. Now we
So
need
it
to
should
predict
fail.
how it's going to fail.
Right. Well, it's gonna. We already know this is gonna pass.
Mhm.
It'll be true.
Right.
And it's gonna come back with an empty collection.
Yep.
Instead of this.
Yep. So we expect it not to be empty and contain that, but it will be empty and does not contain it. Yep. So
Yep.
fails as expected.
Sweet.
So let's make it pass.
Oh, for the simplest way possible.
I think I think it is worth it to do the to lie. Yeah. I think you're going to want to use the Control W way of copying because I think your prints are not going to be correct.
Yeah, I think they were
Otherwise-
wrong too. I was gonna count on Control Shift Enter. I did notice that I was probably getting them wrong, but okay. Result success. Now that needs to be a collection, right? Let's see. Control P. Yep. So we need to do.
Well, technically, it takes a single song, so that's fine too.
Oh, you're right. So theoretically, this should pass.
I believe it should.
Unless we're missing something.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
So now I presume no. Nice try.
Well, we're done if that's the only song we ever want to bulk import.
Right.
with a header row.
Right.
So
I presume we would ratchet us up more with a second.
So I think the way we would, yeah, I think.
Or would we start dealing with the header before we go to second row?
I think we would write another test that has headers in a different order. So basically the same the same song, the same title, the same theme, but in a different order, and that's going to basically not going to work, and that will guide us to finally actually parsing the header row.
Right. So you're saying something like this.
Yeah.
And then changing just the header, or
well,
the header?
No, we should make it valid. So
okay.
swap everything.
So what do you think? Just move it over by one, or
yeah,
swap theme?
I think that's fine. You've basically done a rotate, so that's totally fine.
That's the same. That's the same. Should have succeeded.
And that's still the same outcome.
Yep. So now this should fail.
This should fail with
Different values.
Oh.
Oh, whoa.
Well, of course it passed because we hard coded the return. And so we want it to fail. So we need to now
Force it.
So our other option is we can generalize the code a little bit to use the actual inputs from the song, or we can actually start, because it makes me a little nervous that we don't have a failing test to tell us when we've succeeded by
Right.
passing. So I think we can basically use the data that actually comes in. So parse the columns and then hard code the columns into line 60 there at the bottom. So that still should result in the other test passing, but this one failing.
I'm not grokking if that's a navigator instruction, I'm not grokking. It is too high level for me.
Okay, so what we want to do is we want to parse. So copy line 65 there from the bottom.
65. Right. Got it.
And put it in 59.5. Yep. And then for the artist, basically just say columns sub 0. No. Right where it says earth, wind, and fire, replace that string with the actual column sub 0.
Gotcha.
And gratitude is column sub 1.
Now this will fail.
And then thank you is column sub 2. And that should continue to have the first test that passes in the header should pass. But the one we just wrote should fail.
Right.
Yep. And if you scroll down here, you should be able to see the little difference checker. So it's got the right pieces, they're just in the wrong order, which is as we would have liked it to fail. And now it fails.
Yeah, the first time. We would have preferred to do that.
Yep. All right. So we've got a failing test. Now we can probably do something. We could do a prepare refactoring.
While red?
No, basically disable the red test, go back to green, and then do a prepare. So we could do that, or we could just continue on, try to make the test pass. But I kind of like the prepare.
Sure, let's do it.
So let's disable this. And we should now be all green. I don't think we need a comment here because it's going to
short-lived.
It's basically disabled until we've prepared, but I think we know that that's what we want. Yeah. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to have a method that, given the header columns, tells us which one is the artist. So we're going to do a little wishful thinking there on line 61. So what we'd like is
is that what you're about to say?
No. Let's pull 0 out into a variable. So line 62. So do introduce variable or extract variable. No, just the 0.
Oh, just the 0 part.
Yeah, because the only thing that changes based on the header is which column is which.
Kind of where you're going now.
So this is artist column. Right? So we're basically saying create a new song with the artist column, right? Columns using the artist column index. And now what we'd like to do is we'd like to change that hard-coded 0 into something that's calculated based on the header.
Right.
So we want to find out is which column actually has the artist. So let's write that wishful thinking method.
A separate method. Okay, so something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's write that method.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's run it. That's totally
Refactor
refactoring.
code. Yeah.
All right. Now we'd like we'd like to actually not hard code it. So let's parse our header in the same way that we parsed the song itself.
Right.
There might be an easier way to do this, but we'll do that.
Mm.
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Just to not be confused.
Totally agree. 100.
Okay. So actually, no. So it's an array of columns. They contain the names. Is there a stream way to just say which of these contains the word artist?
I think we don't have to go to stream. We can use there's an arrays class that might be good. So let's see what methods it's got. So we could convert to stream, but we want to see if there are other methods. We don't need to do a binary search. Is there like a contains or an index?
There's no index. No contains. Oh, I'm searching on the letter C. Wait a second. Equals.
No, equals would be for the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Somehow I thought that there'd be a way to do that, but maybe not. So we can just convert it to a list and then do a contains on that.
Okay. Is there a convert to list?
Yeah, there's an arrays dot to list. Or as list, sorry. And then list has index of. Yeah, eventually we'll probably do exactly something something like that, although I don't know that we need to create a map. Oh no, yeah, string to in map. Yes, that's what we'll eventually do. Yes. So what are we searching for? What column are we searching for?
Oh, artist.
Yeah.
So
And just return that.
actually, we just returned that. Yeah.
You could just say dot return at the end if you want.
Oh, really? Let me try that.
Yep.
Cool.
So this is a backwards compatible change. It should still continue to work. Assuming we did our code here. So this is what's nice about prepare refactoring. If somehow we didn't use the index of correctly, or maybe it returned a different value, maybe it was 1 based instead of 0 based, this will let us know because we were passing before returning a hard code 0. We expect this to still return 0. We expect everything to still work. So let's run our tests. And if it doesn't work, we know that there's something wrong with the code that we've written in that which column has artist. But nope, that works fine.
Cool.
And so now we would like to generalize this a bit, right? Because we want to replace column sub 1 with another header-based value.
Something like this.
Yeah, and so I might actually do an introduce parameter on line 70 to get that out there.
Ah, yeah, that makes more sense.
And this would be something like column name.
And then at this point, we would
and then right.
Which column? Now we really need a better name.
I might just say column 4, FOR.
Ah, okay.
Or column index,
4.
or column index of, either way.
Yeah. Column index of header, comma, column name. How does it look on the calling side?
Looks good.
Should we reverse artist and header on the signature? Is it read better?
No,
if
I would find that confusing.
Index of, right? You want the
But it
index of
does,
the header
yeah,
passing it artist. Yep,
right.
I'm with you. You were going to say something. I think I.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's now do that for the next column.
Actually, we could run the test right now, and everything should still pass.
Yeah, yeah.
Which it does. So the next one would be song title column.
Yeah. So what I would have done is extracted the 1 to a variable, and then changed its assignment.
Ah. This would be song title column.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, run again.
Mm-hmm.
Should all pass. Because they've got the one where we swap the columns disabled.
Right.
And right now this is built for just one theme.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Well, it is theme 1 column.
But I was thinking using the word one, O-N-E.
Oh.
Because it kind of reads weird. Or is it just me?
Fine. That's a preference thing. I don't have a strong preference.
Yeah, I just felt like it was hard to parse the one versus an L right next to the
Sure.
header, comma, and we are calling it uppercase theme 1.
Yep.
We run the test, everything should pass.
Oh.
Oh, interesting.
So we got a -1. So well, our max is 10, so that's not the problem.
Was it always 10? I thought we had ratcheted that down.
No, this is the max columns to parse, not the minimum number of columns
Ah,
required. Yeah, this is the one that tells the splitter how many times should I split before I return basically the rest of the string.
right.
So clearly it's the line of code we just wrote, which means we need to look at the tests to see what we've got, because
This is called return success for rows which require. This is the test we.
interesting. So we're getting
The test we just wrote.
yeah, so we're getting oh, you know what? That header has a backslash n in it, and it shouldn't.
Ah. Okay, let's rerun it. Just test that hypothesis. Yeah, that was
Excellent.
it. Good catch.
And so another reason why prepare refactoring is valuable is because it might have been hard for us to see that that was the problem when we were trying to make the new test pass as opposed to doing the backwards compatible change here. All right. Now, if we undisable this test, it should just pass.
That's what I was thinking. It should just pass.
Yeah. Oh,
Ooh,
for the same reason, but now we know exactly why.
because I copied and pasted.
Yes. But so much
Bad,
easier
Mike.
than if we had enabled it and we were trying to get it to pass and we're wondering why the last value wasn't working.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we solved that in a matter of 30 seconds.
Yeah. Hey, Phil Duffel, welcome. So now we have, at least for this minimal case, we are now parsing based on the headers.
Minimal case meaning one theme.
Meaning one theme, song title, and artist, and no other columns.
Right.
But now that we support at least those 3 columns in any order.
Right. And then these could be extracted. But wait a second. If yeah, never mind. When we get to the point where we start passing in album title,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll have
We will
to
have
change.
yeah,
If
we will
it's
have to
there,
say
it has to be
if,
blank or
exactly. Yes. And we're already even before that, we're at least with my very primitive obsession, although I don't know if it's even primitive obsession, it's very much column index of header, column index of header, column index of header, right? So we've got 3 calls to the same method that takes the same parameter. There's something about header that feels like that code about which column is this found in should perhaps be a some sort of object, perhaps.
like a header object is what you're saying?
Perhaps, or a header
Perhaps.
index object, because it's really about the index, or a header mapper that maybe given that something maps it for us, so the entire mapping, something like that. But there's clearly a fair amount of duplication, and the duplication is basically a missing abstraction of something that does that job. Yeah. Probably a good time for a break. Did you want to go to 12:30?
I could do that.
Okay. Then let's take a short break, and we'll pick it up with expanding our tests to support basically our we want to get rid of parse song without header. That's our goal. We want all parse song to be with a header. So we'll take a short break and we'll come back and do that.
Great. See you
All
then.
right. So let's see. Where did that go? There it is. Trapper 52. So thank you for the compliment. Skipping tutorial held by building projects. Excellent. But doing a bunch of Googling. Doing a bunch of Googling is is fine if you're doing a project. The main trick or difficulty is how do you break things down small enough so that you can finally so you can sort of take steps that get you in a direction of stuff working. Um, so the question is do you feel like so doing a bunch of Googling, especially if you're learning new things, that's what I do. If you watch, here the stuff we're doing, there's not a lot of Googling going on, but if you watch my solo streams, especially when I'm working on my ensembler project, I'm doing a fair amount of searching around and trying to figure stuff out. I don't have to do as much as likely someone with your experience because I've been doing this for 30 years. So there's already a lot of stuff in my head. But certainly for new things, like when I was doing my HTMX solo streams, uh, I'm almost constantly searching because I don't know HTMX very well. And so if you don't know something, that's what else are you gonna do? You search, and that's totally fine. Um, and so let me just go on to to this. So um, you shouldn't feel bad about searching for things that you don't know how to do. The question is when you do search and you find something, do you then make progress? Because if you are, then that's fine. So you're going to basically do some stuff. And you're going to say, how do I do this? Like how do we figure out how we got an array? How do we find an element in that array? We could have written a for loop, but it feels like there should be a better way to do that. And it turns out converting it to a list and then doing that, but I had to do a little bit of Googling to figure that out because I don't do arrays stuff very much, and so it's not in my head. We just didn't see the Googling because I was doing it on my screen and not on Mike's screen. But then once we had that answer, then we could make progress. And what I feel like is difficult for a lot of people, especially earlier in their career and novices, is breaking things down small enough and knowing when the code you've written works, right? So this is where I encourage TDD, or at least writing tests. Even if you don't do it first, doing it frequently after you write a bit of code, because otherwise what I see happen, I do a lot of training and coaching, both of individual developers and of teams, is you're writing more and more stuff and you're still not sure if it works until you've written 100 lines, 200 lines, 300 lines of code. And then you try it out and it doesn't work. And now you've got 300 lines of code to troubleshoot. That's much, 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 much harder than 3 lines of code, like we just saw. It's much easier to troubleshoot 3 lines of code than 300 lines of code. But the way we've been taught and the way most people are trained and the way we see other people do things is we tend to see you write, and then you maybe finally try something out. And so breaking things down into smaller steps, and what G. Hill calls many more much smaller steps. And I add in a third S. So it's 3M, 3S is many more much smaller, safer steps. And that means you have to break things down into something that can compile and run. And hopefully you've got some tests written again. But if not, you can at least figure out some way to evaluate that it works. I'll do a search for that. So G. Hill, also known as Michael Hill, but we know him as G. Share my screen.
I don't think I've ever heard him called Michael Hill. I always heard him as Mike Hill.
Michael. So by the way, this brings up the topic that I often discuss with usually individuals that I coach. Learning how to search is also a skill. I watch my son do searches. And so he's on the autism spectrum and has got ADHD, and I think that impacts some of his abilities and makes it more difficult for him. But I see him do searches that are pretty ineffective. And I think effective searching using a good tool helps. So I use Kagi. I think it's pronounced Kagi, Kagi. I don't use Google as my primary search mechanism because Google has too much, to be honest, crap. I pay for Kagi because it's worth it to me. But learning how to search is a skill, which means when you search, you have to I think it's important if you're not finding the things that you want, take a step back and say, what are you searching for? Are you searching in a way that's effective, or are you searching in a way that's not getting you what you want? And if it's not getting you what you want, what are you searching for? So I could give you the link. Luckily, 3 M's and 2 S's is different enough and unique enough, which is why making searching for that is easy versus searching for something like, oh, I want to learn how to do something in Go, which was a terrible, terrible language name. Now it's Golang as one word is the way you search for it. But that was a terrible name from ironically, from a company that is a search engine. So gpyhill.org is the site that has a bunch of articles on many more much smaller steps. So there's not just one link, there's actually several ones. But the idea is, can I break this down into a smaller step and make progress that I can see? visible progress. It may not be visible to the end user that I'm creating the product for or whatever, but it's, can I see that I've gotten somewhere? And that's really, to me, one of the most difficult parts, because it means you're breaking down large tasks into smaller tasks into smaller tasks until you finally get down to something that, oh, this is 2 lines of code, which is, for better or for worse, a requirement to do TDD. And that's why TDD, I think, is hard for folks. Certainly was difficult for me. And I still struggle with this, is how can we make this next step smaller? How can we make progress, but make that next step smaller? And getting better at that is such a fundamental aspect of being able to make progress more more regularly. And so I saw this mention. What I love about test-driven development, and I'm not saying everybody should do it all the time, but I think doing some practice with it and getting a little bit of experience, I think, is worth it, because one of the things it teaches you is that actually failures are good, because it tells you that you're either going in the right direction if it's an expected failure, or you're going in the wrong direction because, like, what the heck, that shouldn't have failed. But because you're taking these very tiny steps, you know, oh, if this didn't work, you back up and you say, it must have been the code I wrote, or as we just saw, we had a stray character that was causing the problem. But it tremendously narrows down your focus to what can go wrong, right? I just wrote 1 line of code. It was working before, now it's not. That must mean that it was that 1 line of code. So you back up, but you're not backing up like a day's worth of work or hours worth of work. You're backing up 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe worth of work. And then you move forward again. And I think this idea of small steps, again, even if you don't do TDD, but you have some way of knowing that that step I took was correct. And I think TDD is a great way of figuring that out, but it's not necessarily the only way, but it's the way I prefer. But it's that small step that is, am I stepping in the right direction, or did I just step in the wrong direction? Now stuff isn't working. And one of the things that TD does for me, and not just me, I know it does it for a lot of people, is reduces anxiety, because you're taking small steps, the risks are low, right? You can, hey, let me return a blank string, see what happens. Oh, that didn't do what I expected. Let me return something else. Well, let me wrap it with an if statement. But each thing is a small thing, and if it fails, we didn't have much invested in the code we wrote. It was, again, the small steps is not just that you make progress, where, you know, if you have to abandon it, it's not a big deal, but it's also you're not as invested, right? So there's the sunk cost fallacy and loss aversion that we have as cognitive biases. It's much easier to throw away 2-3 lines of code than 100 lines of code.
And
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, the one thing that also comes up is, so my training is, I'm a control systems engineer. That was my college master's degree. And so feedback loops are a big part of control systems. And so I map the world of control systems and feedback loops into this world. And so, in other words, like Ted said, we just changed 1 line of code and it broke. So our feedback is really tight. In other words, it's, you know, within seconds, or like you said, minutes of when we made the change. So we don't have as much to go over. So your feedback, because it's tighter, it's more accurate and it's faster, versus a long feedback loop. Like, I don't know, you got a really bad water heater and you turn on the hot, and you got to wait a while for it to get hot, right? That's a slow feedback loop.
And then you
where you're
find out you
waiting.
turned it up too high and the water's too hot and you burn
Right.
yourself.
Yep.
And then you
That's
got
the
to turn it
world of
back
control
down, and it's
systems.
like, okay, now I got to wait half an hour for it to adjust. And it's like, if you had to wait half an hour to do an adjustment, imagine how long that's going to take you, versus if it took 10 seconds. Yep. Yeah, the feedback loops, And by its nature, if you're taking smaller steps, your feedback loops are going to be more frequent. Um, I mean, it's a mathematical formula. The more you can do in a certain amount of time and get feedback on each step, the faster your feedback loops must be, and therefore you will be able to control things better. So Fulnofo asks about so have code that's repeated, and you may not have a clear idea of what's common and so on. And I think noticing the duplication, noticing that code has stuff in common. It may not be pure duplication. It may be just similarity. And I think noticing that is actually a good first step. So noticing that's there, making a note of it, and saying, is there something going on here? You may not know, though, right away what to do about it. It may not be clear enough. You may not have enough examples. You may not have enough similar usages. But at least saying there's something here, and then you can kind of be on the watch, on the lookout for it. And then at some point, you're going to have to say, okay, usually there's some kind of missing abstraction. What might that be? And so we saw, Mike, I want to switch back to your screen because I want to show the code.
Okay, now I'm clear.
So we can see here at the bottom, line 62 through 64, right? There's a lot of similarity, right? There's not pure duplication, if you look at full lines of code, but if you look at sort of subsections of that, column index of is the method that's in common. But in addition, header is always the first parameter. So this leads me to believe that there's a missing abstraction around header. Now, a lot of times people will just say, that's fine, right? But when I see common parameters passed in almost always the same thing, or parameters that travel together, those are code smells. Those are things that may not be something you necessarily want to fix right away, but they are things that are saying there's something going on here that maybe we want to do something about.
It's funny on that one. I saw the duplication as well, but I didn't think abstraction. And this is probably my old C++ way of looking at things. It's like, oh, well, that just means header should be a field to the class, and you pass it in the constructor, and then you're done, right? Why do we have to keep passing it in over and over and over? But it was like we both noticed the similarity, but had different thoughts about where to go. Actually, I like your approach better, frankly.
Yeah, I tend to think like, because I'm always, my goal is always, I want to create more smaller objects. So in addition to many more much smaller steps, I want to create many more much smaller objects. Because what I tend to see is objects that have lots and lots of state. So we could make header state in the song parser. But I feel like, well, then we're still calling a method that we have. And if we make header state, well, that's a string. And so that then leads me down the road of primitive obsession. I'm like, no, this should be a separate class.
Right.
Because I always imagine, like, what if there was a header thing that could just say, what column are you? And that would by definition say, oh, there must be a header class, and it has one method saying which column is this in, what's the index of this string, and then it gives it to me. And then however that's implemented, whether it's doing a search through a list, or whether, as Astrid suggested before, we create a map, that's then completely up to the implementation of that class. And it's not mixed up in all this other stuff.
Right.
So many more much smaller objects is my phrase for the day.
Speaking of your search for MMS, so I did the same thing on Google. Now, if you look at this compared to what you got on Kagi, you want to show your screening if you still have it.
Yeah.
Notice I just got 2 hits to GPA. And for yours,
yeah,
so what this nicely nested.
Yeah. And so that's one of the nice things it does is basically saying, oh, there's some on the same site, there's a bunch of related things. So there's first sketch, there's the shortest distance floptimization, there's this other one. Then we do get the podcast like you saw on Google, but then, oh, look, there is this one, which is probably the same one.
I mean,
and
just
but like,
seeing that initial grouping
yeah,
made me go, I want to try Kagi now. Or
yeah.
however you
And what you
pronounce
can
it.
also do is I can say, in any time I do a search, I'd like to raise anything that GPaw has to say. I want to raise its priority in my search. And so I can say raise.
Of
And so
course.
it will then be ranked higher in any search I do. And I might say something else like, I don't know,
Some
crypt tool.
advertising
Certainly want to basically, in fact, heck, I certainly want to lower that. I might even want to block it because I may not care about that. But
or Methodist.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Or, anyway, so it has a lot of things. It has a lot of features. So I
Is that a
love it.
pay one? You have to buy it?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah. I think there's a free level, but I pay for it because it has a bunch of other features as well. So yeah,
I'll check it out.
Yeah, funny that when you're making money off of how things are displayed versus another mechanism, funny how that affects how things go. So one of the things Trappa asked about was, can I implement TDD with Spring Security? Yes. It's a little bit more difficult because now you're dealing with one of the most complex modules of Spring, which is Spring Security. I bang my head against the wall every time I work with it, but you certainly can. And what's important there then is separation of concerns. You want to test, hey, can I access this thing? And basically you're testing, did you configure the framework correctly? And then at a different level, you want to test, does this work with this kind of user where it's no longer testing the framework. Now I'm just testing, given this role, can this person do that? So that separation of concerns is another aspect, sort of combined with smaller steps, that is really helpful. And then one other thing was, so Full Now was saying, in the design phase, I don't tend to sit very long in the design phase. So I want to see code, and I want to refactor it from code, because design, you may sketch things out, and I'm not saying don't do any design. Certainly, you want to do some design, but I and the folks I hang out with tend to defer any deep understanding, and because it's fine to come up with some abstractions, but I mostly look at refactoring to create my new classes. So for example, could I have designed this up front to say we need some kind of header object that's going to know how to parse it? Probably. Would it have been designed exactly the way we needed? Maybe. But because I'm really good at refactoring, I can rely less on sort of bigger designs up front. But I do think some design up front is important, but I wouldn't be worrying too much about that, especially for small scale kinds of things.
Sorry about your knuckles, Trappa. No fun.
Yeah, my head hurts every time I do something slightly different with Spring Security. It's I basically, it's one of those things where I don't have a good mental model exactly for what's going on, because it's very, very, very complex. And it feels like some of that complexity, if not maybe a large part, but certainly some, is not essential complexity. I don't know if even accidental is the right word, but it feels like it's still too complicated. Yeah, we'll never know less about what we need than right now. Yeah, we'll always know more in the future. And so I do sort of just enough design, but then I rely on being aware of issues like this one of duplication, of fewest possible elements, basically Kemp-Beck's, 4 simple rules of design. Does it work? Is everything clear? Fewest elements, that kind of thing is really, really what I look for. And OAuth2 client, been there. Oh man. If you're like within the guardrails of like what the documentation says, here's how to do this, or some of the tutorials, but the minute you go off the reservation a bit, it's yeah, I mean, again, if you're working with others, and you're sitting around, whether it's a virtual whiteboard or a real one, and this goes back to the smaller steps. You may want to think about architecturally, how does the whole thing gonna look, but ultimately you're going to be implementing a story of some sort, something that's providing value to somebody. And you want to break that down into small steps. And so it's like, okay, what do we need to do here? And if it's really small, then you can do a little bit of design that takes 10 minutes, and then just start coding. So yeah, so very much evolutionary design. Yeah, evolutionary or emergent design. Yeah, that's what I do. And the reason why that works for me is because I've made a lot of mistakes in the past, in how I've designed things, and so you learn from that. Design patterns can sort of help, although I don't think they're sufficient. Certainly, the way they're usually written about or taught about. Um, but you sort of start gaining some, and this is where good deliberative practice and katas can really help to practice that kind of thing. But once you actually implement something, you may have planned, oh, here's what the things we might need, but then you implement it and you find, oh, these don't fit well together. Good thing I didn't write all that code up front. Let's figure out exactly what we need. Yeah, optionality. Do I do this now? Do I do this later? Can I? I always think about it as like, can I procrastinate on this? Is this effective procrastination, or is this gonna hurt me? If I can defer it, because I'll know more, and maybe come up with something better, then I might say I'm going to defer this because I don't quite understand yet what the abstraction is. And there are a bunch of other aspects of sort of optionality. All right, so do we want, since we've been talking about abstractions, do we want to abstract out header? Of course, after we do a commit, which we should have done.
Let's do the commit first.
So let's do the commit.
What did we do? Oh, right.
We basically support header for the minimally required columns.
Assuming minimally required means just one theme.
That is true. Yes, that's why. Yes, because we require at least one theme. Yes,
at least one theme. Yeah. Okay. You want to do that? Deal with the primitive obsession now, since we talked about it, and probably folks.
I think so. At least we'll get it started.
Yeah.
Probably won't finish it, but I think we can certainly get that started.
And we're green. Just double check.
Yeah.
We haven't run is all in a while.
Yes. Hopefully that's okay.
Yeah.
but let's find out. Oh, they actually haven't they all been running, or
Oh, during the commits, they are.
did it run all, or the IO free? Let's run all. Let's just make sure.
Yeah, I forget what the commit. I'm pretty sure the commits run all. Or is it only on push? Been a while, I forget.
No, it's on
Oh,
commit. It's on commit.
okay, so they passed.
Okay, cool.
Sweet.
So,
There were 2 ignored tests. Now that one's empty.
that one is the wiring of parse parse all to parse song passing in the header. Maybe we want to make that work. That should be really straightforward. So let's enable it. So it should fail because we're not handing the header, we're just handing an empty string. So that should fail. Yeah.
But parse all, we haven't dealt with
Right. So
parse all
now
getting the header yet.
it should be one line of code to fix that. So we'll need to go into parse all and extract the header, and then pass that in.
Mhm. Do we pass in header to? No, we got it. We parse the first line.
Right. So what we want to do is extract the TSV song lines, skip one, and pull out and assign the header from that.
So for this, and then do a local var or
So yes, it's extract variable. Yeah.
extract a variable. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
What will we call this?
This would be our song stream. Skip is sort of irrelevant
Yeah, it's a
because we're
weird
not
name.
going to skip. And let's remove the skip because we no longer want to skip. We actually want to grab that.
Yeah.
So we don't want any dot there. Yeah.
No doubt at all. Okay.
But before we do the filter, we want to get the first element. No. So you want to just move the semicolon up because that's it. That's the whole line.
Oh, I
Then
see.
what we want to do is we want to, from song stream, we want to get the next line.
Is it called get next line?
I don't know what it is. What would it be? It's so rare that you basically just grab a single element. What would it be? Because it's basically, is it a peak? I mean, I guess we
Peak?
could do a peak. I just want take one. It's gotta. I mean, we could just, since we're handed a list, we could just grab it from the list and still do the skip. Oh, we're not handed a list. We're handed a string that we then parse with lines.
It's too few lines to
That makes sure there's at least.
lines count. Okay, that's all it does.
I guess we could just do a find first. It'll return an optional, but we know there's going to be the one because we've already ensured that on line 20. We actually want to do a get.
Like that? Or
Yeah, so undo a few times because you want to get back to without the variable definition. Yeah. Let's
right.
do a get. Actually, I think we want to, just to be sure, we can do an or else.
Here or else?
No. So instead of the get,
Or else get? Or else?
what we want is or else and then an empty string. So basically, it will return the first element, but if it's not there for some reason, we'll get an empty string. And now we want to assign
because
that
it's
to a
returning an
variable.
optional. Right, and
Right,
this would
and
be
that's our
header.
header. Yep.
Then we replace this with header.
Yep.
Now everything should continue to work.
And I'm curious what IntelliJ is highlighting there on SongStream. Oh, because find first is a terminal operation.
Oh, we broke the stream.
Dang. I think we might have to use peak. Because find first is a terminal operator. So yeah, so we're gonna have to use peak. So instead of find first, we do a peak. We don't actually want to do anything. Oh, peak is just gonna ugh. So action is what the peak is gonna do. And there's no good way. All right, we'll have to convert the stream to a list and then turn it back into a stream. That's there might be a better way, but I can't think of it.
Like this?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no point in holding on to song stream, so you can just inline that. So this will be the stream list. And then inline song stream variable there, just that one. And then delete that line, yeah. And then song stream will be stream lists. And then you got to do dot stream to convert it to a stream.
Now we're back.
Let's create the header variable, and then we can run our test to see that we've.
Right. The header variable we get from.
So if you click on header that's currently red, we can go ahead and have it create the variable for us.
I'll just have it create a variable. Got it.
Yeah. Does it not want to create the variable for us? All right, we'll have to do it manually. That's weird. That. Not sure why. Not sure what it thinks it is. Okay. Let's assign that to a blank string because that's what it was before. So this should be equivalent to what we had before.
Right. Oopala. Oh.
Delete that. Somehow that's what got imported by header, and that's why.
That's why header didn't recognize.
That's why header looked weird. Okay, we broke something. Probably because we took out the skip. So let's put the skip back in.
Oh, right. That would be
after the stream. Yeah, we said skip one. Okay. Right. So that's the one we were trying to make pass.
Right.
So now what we can do is assign header to streamlist get first. There we go.
That should do it, right? We'll see. Nope.
Did we not enforce passing in a header row all the time?
Let's see. Let's see. We're in parse all.
So when we said too few lines in, okay, so we required it to have 2 lines. Okay, so it's something else. Oh, okay. Well, so basically we're not yet ready to do what we want to do.
Oh,
Because
because the rest of the code.
don't fully parse. Yeah, we don't fully parse. If we're given a header, we switch modes and we only know how to parse 3 things when we're given a header. So we can't do this just yet. So
Right.
let's undo the change. Let's
We could undo it by doing this part.
So yeah, that's all
right?
we want to go back to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we want to disable the test above saying we can only do this once the header is fully parsed. Yep.
So now we should go with 2 disabled in success. Yep.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, Astrid, we could use the peak and get a holder object, and it's not worth it. There might be some other way to do that, but it's really awkward. Because we'd have to do a peak, and then in that lambda, we'd assign it to something that could hold a value because you can't do it. And then it would be a supplier. This is easier. This is probably a good point to stop.
Darn, we can do the headers thing. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's check Jira and let's update Jira. So I think we've done it at least for those three columns. We have not done it for the other columns.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So we want to support columns basically, and just remove the ones we already cover. So drop theme 1, yeah. And we might want to call out that we want theme 2, 3, and 4, that we already handle theme 1. So basically support something, maybe say something after support these remaining columns that we say we
do 3, work on theme 2, 3, and 4 first. Is that what you meant?
No, it's just call out that we've already done theme 1, but we haven't done the other themes. I was going to put that on the line above it because we may not notice it if it's where you're doing it.
Like that?
Yeah.
Hey.
I guess we can always write our own collector. It would be an interesting exercise, and that would definitely be something I'd be doing a lot of searching around for. Yeah. Well, not just the PMs, but we will be happy next time. And I think it's actually kind of funny when we started the stream, we actually didn't look at Jira. We kind of knew where we were.
We dove right in.
Or at least we thought we knew where we were. So the other thing we might want to note even though it'll probably pop up again, but we may as well put it
the
somewhere
header.
as the header refactoring. Even though you should never put refactoring items in Jira, we're doing it.
Well, we could say it as
Yeah.
and what is that?
Parse all, or is it? No, it's parse song.
I think it's parse song, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't be scrolling. Controls F12, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to grab this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
That's fine. I think we'll get it.
Cool.
All right.
Mark.
So that's all for today, folks. So we will be streaming again tomorrow. We'll be starting half an hour earlier than we did today. Although for those of you who didn't keep up with the time change, it'll be half an hour later or something. But anyway, it'll be 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is 4 p.m. UTC. So it used to be 5 p.m. UTC. Now it's 4 p.m. UTC. And it will be, so we're basically -7 from UTC, and that won't change until October. I think October. But for those of you in Europe, you're probably going to adjust your time zone relative changes in a few weeks. But regardless, our 4 p.m. UTC will not change. You will just have to figure out what that is in your time zone.
I'm looking at the chat about story points, and it's a good thing we're ending because I would go on a rant, and Ted might as well.
Yep. Yep. If you're whatever relative to UTC, so you're UTC +1, and that might or might not change for you at the end of March, depending on where you are. So that's it. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the great questions and chatting and so on. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right.
Bye, everyone.